What's up, K-Divas, and welcome back to another tutorial. This is going to be one for a pair of summer shorts. It's officially summer warm season, so it's an appropriate time to make a pair of comfy shorts. This one has an elasticated waistband and the fit is on the loose side, kind of like a pair of boxer shorts. So make sure to keep on watching all the way to the end because I share the pattern drafting, the cutting, and the stitching. I also use the leftover scraps to actually make my daughter a matching pair because why not? So if you'd like to see how I made these, make sure to keep on watching, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and let's get straight into the tutorial. Here's a list of the measurements that I used to create the shorts pattern. I have a video showing how to take lower body measurements, so make sure to watch that when you're measuring yourself to make your own shorts or for someone else. The fabric I use is this light cotton print and I only used about 1 meter. I also got a wide elastic band. This one is about 1.5 inches wide, and those are literally the two materials that I used to make this pair of shorts. So I'm going to start off with the front pattern and I'm going to be drawing a vertical line like so. Make sure to leave some space towards the bottom to create the crouch area. Then I'm going to the top edge. I'm drawing a horizontal line that sits right on top, which is going to become my waistline. And then I'm going to go into measure and mark the vertical distance from my waist to my hip, and after that my crouch depth, which is the distance from my waist to the point where my butt hits a seat. That's how you take that measurement. I'm going in next to draw a horizontal line that cuts through those 2 points so I can go back in and measure my hip line, my crouch line, and all those other lines are important. So the first is the waist, second is the hip, and the third is on the first line or the waistline. You would need to divide your hip measurement by 4 and add about 2 to 3 inches to that, and then mark that along the waistline, the hip line, and the crouch depth line, because the waistband is going to be elasticated, so it needs to be able to go over your butt, over your hips comfortably, so it is a loose fit overall. And I'm going in here to connect the points along the side, so that's going to become the side seam. At this point you need to measure the hip width or that distance here, and whatever that is, divide that by 4. So if yours is 12, divide that by 4, you have 3. Mine ended up being around 10 inches, and divide that by 4, you have 2.5, and add that to the crouch depth line and extend it in this direction. So once you draw a curved line that goes back to the hip, you now have the shape of the crouch seam that wraps around the front of the shorts. So that, I say, is what really makes this pattern definitely a pair of shorts and not just a skirt or a rectangular or square looking piece. And to decide on your shorts length, I ended up working with around 16 inches, so something that is above the knee but not too short. And I'm going in here to mark my desired short length and extend the side seam downwards, draw in a hemline as well, so I have a clear bottom edge for my shorts. I wanted to have a little bit of a flare around the hemline. This is optional, so I added 1 inch on both sides, so on the inner side and on the side seam edge, and I just flared out the shorts pattern. You can leave yours straight, but be sure that the around thigh measurement on yourself and this hemline width, they are good. There's difference there because you want the bottom of the pants to be, of the shorts, to be loose. Next up, I'm going to the waistline and marking 1/2 inch inwards to just ensure that it has a smoother fit on the center front edge. And with that, that's the front pattern basically done. I'm just going in here to add a grain line, write down my annotations. This is going to be the front. I need to cut 2 pieces of this, and I'm just going ahead to add a 1 centimeter seam allowance. To ensure the hemline edges, they go in the direction that is correct when this particular part of the shorts is turned up, I have folded it upwards and I'm going to be drawing in the direction that it should go. So this one, I'm copying the shape of how it looks like on the inner edge, and I'm copying it on the side seam as well. So one is folded out, you see that the inner edge needs to flare outward, so when it's folded back up, it naturally aligns in the way it's meant to go, and the one for the outer edge kind of goes in. So this is the front short pattern all done, and it's going to help me create the back. For the back, I am going to be finding the middle point between my waist and my hip on the front pattern that I just finished. Mark a point there, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line that cuts through that point that I just drew. To create room for the butts and the hips on the back of the shorts, I'm going to be slashing this line open. If you've seen my basic trouser pattern, this is basically how you are able to adapt a front shorts or pants to accommodate your butt that is naturally on the back. So I have added some weights here just to keep my pattern still, and I have taped down the bottom section of this pattern, and I'm flaring upwards by about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. That's like industry standard. You can add more if you are more generously endowed on the back, or you could flare yours less if you have a smaller butt. So I am drawing in side seam, copying the waistline and the center back edge, the hemline and the inner leg. The other change that happens for the back pattern is I'm extending the crouch line by 1 inch. This is going to just add a little bit more room for a comfortable sit when I have this pair of shorts on. So with that extension added, I'm going to change up the shape of this section of the shorts pattern like so. But those are like the two major changes. So like the flare, the extension of the center back, and then the extension on the crouch line, and then that will naturally affect the shape of the pattern. But I'm just going in here to cut out any excess paper I don't need. I also added 2 notches on the center back edge just to help me differentiate the front from the back. And then you remember the front pattern that we slashed? I'm just going back here to tape that up because I still need that pattern. So I'm just sellotaping it closed so I'm able to actually use it to cut my fabric and stitch my shorts. The last pattern piece I need to make is one for the waistband, and for this I'm going to be measuring the front waistline and back waistline because I want a waistband that actually fits into the waistline perfectly, which I want to add my elastic to. So I've measured the front and the back and I've taken note of that. The waistband length is your front and your back waistline, and then you need to cut 2 pieces. So when you join it together, you have one full piece that sits around. Just ensure that your waistband covers your elastic band. So mine is 1.5 inches wide, so I'm making a waistband that is double of that measurement because I plan to wrap the waistband piece around the elastic. So here I'm marking the length, which is my front and back waistline, and ended up being 21 inches total. And once I have that drawn, I am going to decide on the width, which, as I mentioned earlier on, need to be wider than my elastic band. So I went with 5 inches, which that includes seam allowance as well. So I'm just going in here to draw the top edge of my waistband pattern piece, as well as adding seam allowance, annotations, anything extra that I need to have a complete pattern. And this pattern would allow me to cut 2 pieces, so once they are joined up the side, I have a full circular piece that could go into the waistline of my shorts. What might be helpful at this point is to find the middle point of this pattern like I'm doing here, because that's going to help you match the center front and center back edges. It's not compulsory, but I found that was actually quite helpful, so I wasn't guessing, oh, is the waistband sitting where it's meant to be? So that also helped me draw in a grain line to guide me to cut the pattern correctly. And that was the last pattern piece that I needed to make to cut my shorts. At this point, I have pinned down my sewing pattern onto my fabric, and I'm cutting out the front. So I needed 2 pieces for the front, the back 2 pieces as well, and the waistband piece I need a pair too, so 2 of each. So these are all of the pieces cut, and I'm just going in here to cut my notches, which I say are so underrated. Notches would really become so helpful when you want seams to match in the way they are meant to. So center front, side seams, crouch area, cut all those notches. They are very, very helpful. Everything has been cut, everything has been notched. It is time to sew. For the assembly or sewing, I am putting right side together of my front pieces together, and I'm going to be pinning them in place, and repeat the same for the back. So the the right sides of your fabric facing each other and just pin everything along that center front or center back edge. And I'm going to be sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, which is how much seam allowance I added to my sewing pattern. Sew on the seam allowance that you added to your sewing pattern or that you added to your fabric when you were cutting your pattern, because that you want to stitch away. If you don't, you're going to have extra measurement on your piece, and when you try it on, you wonder why it feels big. So after stitching, I went ahead to overlock everything, and this is what it looks like. I have my back pieces all joined. I'm going to grab the front, lay them with right sides facing each other, and I'm going to be sewing up the sides, so left and right side, and then the inseam or the inner leg, so I have everything connected as a full pair of shorts. With sewing trouser short pieces, you would find that certain parts are not perfectly matched because of how the pattern looks. You would need to ease things into each other, especially like the inner leg, where the back is obviously a very distinct shape, is different from the front. You would need to ease it together, but because they're slightly curved, it actually fits and it works. So I stitched it up, overlocked it, and I know I'm ready to actually sew the waistband, which is 2 pieces. This is where my elastic is going to sit. But to create a tunnel, I'm going to sew up the side seam first. So for both sides, just simple straight stitch, 1 centimeter seam allowance. And once I'm done doing that, I don't even need to overlock, because this I'm actually going to be folding against itself, putting the wrong side of the fabric inside that fold, so I have something that looks like this. So I'm going to grab my shorts, and I'm going to be joining the waistband to the waistline of my shorts. And because I notched those middle points of the pattern and I transferred that to my fabric, I just added a pin there, so I knew that those notches would sit on the center front or the center back, and then the seams would be on the sides of the shorts. This I'm going to sew, leaving an opening of 3 to 4 inches for me to pass my elastic through, because if you sew it close, how are you going to pass your elastic through? So I'm stitching this up first, no overlocking, and once it's done sewn around, I'm going to grab my elastic. The elastic length is your natural waistline length. If you cut it too small, you would find that you would have difficulty breathing. So I find that your waist measurement, cut an elastic that is that length. If you want just a little bit of stretch, you can remove about 1 inch from the length, but I'll say like your waistline length is a good place to start if you don't know how long to cut your elastic. So that I've passed through the tunnel using a safety pin, pulled out the other end, and I'm going to be sewing the ends of the elastic close to ensure that it is secured inside the tunnel of the waistband. The second to last step is to sew the opening that we left for the elastic band to go through. Just stitch that close, and once it's all stitched close, I can go in and overlock this. If you don't have an overlocker, you could use a zigzag stitch or bias tape or an overcast foot to finish up the seams if you are using a woven fabric, especially because it's going to fray. To finish everything up, I'm going to fold and sew the hemline of the shorts. This I've already overlocked off camera, and after doing that, I went ahead to give my piece a press, and this is what it looks like. It is such a comfortable, ridiculously comfortable summer piece, something that you could dress up or down. And because it's elasticated, you don't need to think about any buttons or any zips. You kind of just like put it on and take it off. You can make it as long or as short as you would like. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this easy, beginner-friendly project. I hope you have fun creating yours. It is one of those designs that once you make one, you'll be tempted to make a second, a third, or a fourth. And I love how this turned out. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Leave any questions you might have in the video comment section down below, and until my next one, have a good morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are. Bye.